Okay, for today's video, we are reviewing the Safari Ltd Carnegie Collection Cryolophosaurus. So this is a figure I'm super excited to review. This is a figure I won in an auction for a really great price. And I ended up working out a deal with the seller and ended up making that a lot, which is a video that's already up on the channel. So if you want to watch that, I'll put a link to that in the description. But yeah, I was really happy to win that auction. To get this figure for the price I did. This figure is a harder to get Carnegie model that can be pretty expensive. This figure right now, from most of the stuff I've seen on eBay, ranges from about $60 to $100. But luckily in the auction, I got this figure for around 40 to 50-ish, I want to think. And then after I added some stuff, I ended up paying about 60 for the total lot. But it was really a really good price for this figure for what I've seen. And I mean, obviously with it being eBay and stuff, you can luck up and occasionally you'll find like one for really low listed that somebody just doesn't realize, but that's how much I ended up paying, and I was very happy to pay that with how hard of a figure this is to get in this good of a condition. And yeah, we'll just get right into the animal information. So, Cryolophosaurus is a theropod dinosaur from the early Jurassic that has an interesting looking crest and was very large for its time. Being over 6 meters, but quite a bit smaller than some of the later theropods. And Cryolophosaurus was discovered in Antarctica, where it would have been the apex predator in the Hansen Formation, hunting prey like prosauropods and some other dinosaurs, but prosauropods definitely would have been in its diet. And Cryolophosaurus has some debate on where it should be classified, though. It is clear it is a more primitive theropod with a lot of similarities to predators or to other theropod dinosaurs like Dilophosaurus, causing some paleontologists to put it as more, with some paleontologists putting it as more primitive than Dilophosaurus, but some others considering it more advanced than predators like Ceratosaurus and putting it as an early Titanourae member, meaning it would be in the group with the theropods like Tyrannosaurus rex, Allosaurus, and Spinosaurus. But it obviously ranges a lot on the classification, but whatever it is, it would be a more primitive theropod. And now I guess we'll just get into the review of the figure itself. So, Cryolophosaurus this figure has a very, very similar mold to one specific figure. Well, not just the mold, but it reminds me of one specific figure for a few reasons, and that is the Carnegie Collection Concavenator. These are two figures that remind me a lot of each other just because they're both in this pose with like the arms down, the tail just going. I mean, you can see it's just the head's turned a different way. And I mean, with the tail of the Concavenator, it's like curved, but the Cryolophosaurus is like straighter out. But just they remind me a lot of each other as far as the mold in those ways. Also, these figures are very similar sized in a similar, I think in the exact same scale actually. Like I think it's the 125 scale. So they're actually in a. I always am not sure what to say on this, if it's a larger or smaller scale, but whatever it is, these figures are more closer to the actual dinosaur than the majority of the Carnegie line figures. Also, one other thing that is similar, both of these models have been remade by Safari. Not the exact model, but like Safari has made an updated Cryolophosaurus and Concavenator. And while I do really like both of those updated models, I actually prefer both of these Carnegie models. And honestly, as far as accuracy, those ones might be more accurate. It would be close though, just because the Carnegie models are not very inaccurate, especially not these later ones. But I personally do prefer these two to the updated ones. But I do really like those two updated ones, especially with like the price and stuff. If you don't want to pay the prices for these, I would definitely just recommend getting the updated ones. And yeah, other stuff about this figure specifically. I love the colors on this figure. I love like this yellowish tan top with like the whitish color on the bottom. And I love this bright blue crest. I think it looks awesome. I just think that they chose a really good color scheme for Cryolophosaurus. Such a great figure. It is a little thin. I think Cryolophosaurus would have been a little thicker than this. Like, I don't think Cryolophosaurus was a super heavily built dinosaur, not like a T-Rex or anything, but I don't think it would be this thin. One other thing, I think there is, a decent possibility that Cryolophosaurus could have feathers. I'm not going to discredit the figure for not having feathers just because I don't even know if there's a Cryolophosaurus figure out with feathers yet. But just due to where Cryolophosaurus lived in Antarctica, and I know Antarctica at that time would be a lot warmer than it is today, but it would still be a colder place compared to, like some other places throughout the world. But there's still a decent possibility that a dinosaur like Cryolophosaurus would have feathers just due to the location that it lived in. And it wouldn't be unheard of for a theropod this large to have feathers because Yutyrannus, which I believe is larger than Cryolophosaurus, either similarly sized or larger, did have feathers. So it wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility for the dinosaur the size of Cryolophosaurus to have feathers. But there is no fossil evidence currently of Cryolophosaurus having feathers, but we don't have a ton of fossils of Cryolophosaurus, so it's not like we can really go against it. So I'm just saying, if this figure did have feathers, I would be fine with it, and though it doesn't, I'm fine with it too. But I'm just saying it could have had feathers. And I'll now do some Cryolophosaurus figure comparisons. I don't have a ton of Cryolophosaurus figures. I do have two other ones, that is. So now I have three. I do have the GeoWorld Jurassic Hunters Cryolophosaurus. This is a one that I've had in my collection for a while. I actually really like this figure, even though I know GeoWorld's not everybody's favorite. I do really like this figure, though. The colors are really cool on it, and I do know it does have that cartoonish look that not everybody loves, but I do personally like this figure, even though obviously this one is more accurate. And then I do have the Theropod model that I really like. Out of these two, I do prefer the Carnegie as well, but do really like all of these Cryolophosaurus figures I have. There are some other good Cryolophosaurus figures out. The new Safari one is really great. Definitely would like to get that one pretty soon. Who's some other? Papo has a pretty good one. That's in an interesting pose. Not too crazy for Papo, but probably not the most accurate pose. And then there is the Schleich one, which is not that great. It almost looks like a Giganotosaurus. It looks like some large weird theropod just with the Cryolophosaurus crest smacked onto it. That's what it looks like to me, at least. But maybe I haven't seen that figure in person, so it might be better looking in person. But just from the online stuff, that's at least what it looks like to me. But yeah, I definitely really love this figure, and I think it's probably one of the best Cryolophosaurus figures out, if not the best. And this, like I've said before, with this being one of the later Carnegie models in that last 5 or 6 years of production, it's no surprise that it's one of the better models out there. All those models I think are some of the best models out, and like I say a lot of the time, this one is no exception to that. And as far as what documentaries and stuff, Cryolophosaurus was featured in Dinosaur Revolution. Dinosaur Revolution is a documentary I like, but I don't remember a ton of what was in it. I think in that documentary there's a Cryolophosaurus that breaks off the crest of another Cryolophosaurus. I don't remember exactly, but I do remember liking Cryolophosaurus, how it was in the documentary. But yeah, I definitely do like how Cryolophosaurus was in Dinosaur Revolution. But Dinosaur Revolution, I do really like the documentary, but I just haven't seen it a ton of times to have a set opinion on the documentary. And now I guess we'll go over the featured figures. So obviously this is the Safari Ltd Carnegie Collection Cryolophosaurus. This is the GeoWorld Jurassic Hunters Cryolophosaurus. The Theropod Cryolophosaurus. The Safari Ltd Carnegie Collection Concavenator. The GeoWorld Jurassic Hunters, or I don't know if this one's specifically the Jurassic Hunters one, but it's the GeoWorld Plateosaurus. And Plateosaurus specifically, I don't believe lived with Cryolophosaurus, but there were some other prosauropods like Glacialosaurus, Safari Ltd Yutyrannus, Safari Ltd Spinosaurus, Safari Ltd Dilophosaurus, Schleich Tyrannosaurus Rex, Safari Ltd Baby Allosaurus, Safari Ltd Ceratosaurus. But yeah, overall, Cryolophosaurus has to be one of my favorite theropods. It's such a cool dinosaur, and it's one of my favorite dinosaurs, especially one of my favorite theropods. So, if not just dinosaurs in general. I don't think it made my top 10 theropods list at the time, but maybe if I made that video today, it probably would be, honestly. Just that list is ever changing, especially that last little group. And I made that video a while ago. I'll put a link to that video, but I don't remember if Cryolophosaurus is in it. I don't think it was, but if it would have been like one of the last ones. But not only is it a super cool looking dinosaur, but it's also just super cool as far as like the classification controversy. Like, it could be even more primitive than Dilophosaurus, or it could be an early Tetanurae member. So just being a classification nerd, it's really interesting as far as that. And with all that, I'm just really glad to have a great representation of this amazing dinosaur in my collection. And if you ever get the chance to get the Safari Ltd Carnegie Collection Cryolophosaurus, I would definitely recommend picking it up. It's such a great figure, but with it being in the Carnegie line, it is kind of a harder figure to get. But like I said, if you can't get this figure, there's some other great Cryolophosaurus figures out on the market right now. Like Safari has an updated one right now. I'll put a link to that figure, and I'll put a picture of it here at the end of the current Safari Ltd Cryolophosaurus. But I definitely think this one specifically is a great figure. And like I said, if you get the chance to get it, I would definitely recommend picking it up, especially if you can get it for a good price. But I think that's it for this video, so thank you all for watching, and I am out.